Welcome everyone to our special Christmas Eve assembly. We haven't been gathering on Christmas Eve in recent years, but tonight we wanted to make a space for art, wisdom, and connection in this most unusual and daunting holiday season. I'm joined by Reverend Dr. David Breeden tonight. I'm Reverend Jim Fody, and we are running this without our tech volunteers tonight, so we appreciate your grace as we proceed. Whether you've been with us many times or this is your first visit, we are glad you are a part of our gathered community. We invite everyone to connect during the chat and to stop by our Zoom coffee hour immediately following assembly. The link to coffee hour will be available in the chat and can also be found in your most recent emails from FUS. Our monthly theme for December is stillness, and on this frigid evening in Minnesota, we pause to listen, to reflect, to appreciate, and to remember, and to look ahead to the brighter days to come. Come, let us gather in community.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and we light this chalice, remembering our aspiration to support one another's journey toward meaning and connection in the here and the now. Our aspiration to support one another's journey toward meaning. Our aspiration to support one another's journey toward
I'm Allison Wyeth, Director of Religious Education for First Unitarian Society.
Our aspiration to support one another's journey
to
toward
share our story with our young ones, Director of Religious Education, and anyone who loves a good story. Society. So gather round for our time for all ages to share our story with our young ones. Anyone who loves a good story. So gather round for our time for all ages to share our story. Hello, I'm Allison Wyeth, Director of Religious Education for First Unitarian Society. It's my great privilege today to share a story with our young ones and anyone who loves a good story. So gather round for our time for all ages. Our story today comes from an unusual source. At a stretch, you could call it from the horse's mouth. We'll be hearing the somewhat traditional tale of the Nativity, the story of the night Jesus was born. But this time, we get the very familiar tale from the perspective of the donkey, who helped carry the young family through the night seeking shelter. And we'll get to hear what this loyal and helpful creature notices and emphasizes about this story we've all heard so many times. So here it is. Refuge by Ann Booth and Sam Usher. The man led me, and I carried the woman all the way to Bethlehem. And then the baby was born. The shepherds came first, and after them came the kings. When the last king left, the scent of frankincense lingering in the air, we all slept, and the man had a dream of danger. He woke long before the sun rose and told the woman. She took the baby and kissed him. She smelled his sweet baby breath and felt his soft, warm baby skin and how his lashes tickled her cheek as he sleepily nuzzled her neck. Time to go, she said. Then they wrapped him up warm and kissed him again. And the man came to get me. He patted me between the ears and led me out. Come on, old friend, we're off on a journey again. And we left some gold for the innkeeper, for he had been good to us when others had not. And we set off under starlight through empty streets, whilst people were sleeping, hoping for the kindness of strangers again. And we passed the shepherds in the fields, and there were whispered blessings, and the movement of the sheep in the darkness, and the clasp of rough hands, and the love of warm hearts. And I kept walking, carrying my precious load, and the woman held the baby close to her heart, and she and the man talked about journeys and dreams and warnings and the love of a baby and the kindness of strangers. And when we rested and they were frightened, they took hope from each other and from the baby's tiny first smile. And we entered into Egypt, and we found refuge. Such a sweet and lovely reminder of what we can learn from the tale when we consider it from a new point of view. The near universal understanding of what it means to love a baby, the importance of kindness and warm hearts, the seeking of a place of refuge for those you care about most in the world, and hope for a better future. May it be so, and happy holidays.
The minister's discretionary fund helps us when things get bad for folks. And it's a little bit off of the regular budget so that the ministers can react very, very quickly when we do get some kind of emergency for one of our people. And anytime that you do have a need, I encourage you to ask. And if you have the capacity, please consider giving to this special fund. Again, it's the minister's discretionary fund. It's for just our members to help out when the going gets a little bit tough. You can help us out by going to firstunitarian.org/donate, by going to PayPal and the Give Plus app. Thank you so, so much.
I am dreaming tonight of a place I love even more than I usually do. And although I know it's a long road back, I promise you I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents on the tree. Christmas Eve will find me where the love light gleams. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my Christmas Eve will find me where the love light gleams. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams. If only in my
A reading by the Reverend Victoria Stafford, Senior Minister of White Bear UU Church, from a piece called A Mind of Winter. None of it is real. The virgin, the donkey, the shepherds, the star. None of it is real. But much of it rings true. Not the doctrine, but the mystery. Not the miracles, but the empirical, undeniable evidence. Tyrants are always persecuting the poor, demanding their documents and proof of citizenship. Rich governments are always closing their borders against aliens from Nazareth and Bethlehem and Guatemala, and hunting down young upstarts who threaten revolution. Poor women are always and forever asked to bear unspeakable burdens, to accept the burden as a virtue and suffer like saints. And somewhere, almost always, someone is opening their door in the night and saying, "I have room for you. Come in." Sometimes wise men and wise women choose not to be complicit and bring lovely gifts instead of treachery. And people have always been wandering under the stars. We still are. Whether listening for trumpets of angels or the wailing of babies or the whisper of wind breathing into our cynical ears and ice-cold hearts the hope of peace on earth, goodwill restored.
In the part of the year when nighttime dwarfs daytime, it's not surprising that human beings in the Northern Hemisphere, in different countries and different places, would create a season filled with holiday stories. Stories to pass the time, stories to try to make sense of the world, stories with different kinds of truths. The story of light starting to return barely a minute at a time is the story of the winter solstice and offers hope of warmth in the face of cold and snow. And it's a story as reliably true as anything known to humanity. The story of Hanukkah, with its miraculously burning lamp, also speaks to the yearning for hope and the yearning for a steady source of light in our lives. And the turning of the new year on the Gregorian calendar is often represented by a diaper-clad baby entering the scene to replace an old, worn-out year. And New Year's traditions invite us to close one chapter of our lives and begin writing the next. In a modern-day culture that breathlessly values the latest breaking news, these stories, some of which have been around for millennia, are revisited every year. They endure because they offer the familiarity and comfort of tradition, and they meet a human need for ritual, and because they speak to truths about life. Most prominent among these stories is, of course, the story of Christmas. While many of us may be from theological traditions that appreciate the narrative for its beauty and metaphor rather than for its veracity, the story itself is a powerful one with universal themes and elements that are not hard to relate to. Every one of us has a birth story, and every one of us started off life as a beautiful, vulnerable baby. Every human being at some point or another has wished for someone to come along and save us, perhaps even more so in the past few years. And every one of us needs reasons to be hopeful and to carry on. The Christmas story has enduring appeal not because everyone thinks it's true, but because it addresses many aspects about the human condition. It's a story worth knowing and reflecting on, even for humanists and non-Christians. Perhaps not as a source of strength, but at least as one source for helping us understand our world. Whenever I talk about Christmas, I like to review the basics of the Christmas narrative. I do this because more and more people in the US are growing up outside of Christianity. And given that most ministers in America share the exact same Christmas story every year at this time, I think it's okay for us to do a little review too. 2,000 years ago in the Middle East, Mary, a virgin, is pregnant because God has made her so, in fulfillment of prophecy. Mary and Joseph aren't married, and they go to Bethlehem because the emperor put out a decree calling for each man to go to his hometown for a census. There are no empty rooms for them to stay in Bethlehem, and so after Jesus is born, he is placed in a manger, which is a box that livestock eat from. Angels announce the birth to nearby shepherds who come to see the baby. A bright star above Bethlehem helps draw some wise men to the site, and they bring the famous gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Soon after, King Herod, feeling threatened by the power of this newly arrived Messiah, issues a decree to have all baby boys killed. But Mary, Joseph, and Jesus escape and make it safely to Egypt. What I find interesting is that in the 4 books of the Bible dedicated to the life of Jesus, only 2 include the story of his birth, and they each tell it quite differently. The decree that sends the family to Bethlehem is in one version of the story, and King Herod's death decree is in the other. The gold, frankincense, and myrrh are in one gospel, and the manger is in another. And it's just a manger. There is no reference to a stable or a barn. Some sources have it as a cave, and there's actually no mention of animals at all. No ox and no lamb, and for that matter, no drummer boy. And while the wise men are commonly described as being a group of 3, the Bible doesn't actually provide a number. This reminds me of the very beginning of the Hebrew scriptures, the well-known chapters of Genesis, in which Adam and Eve are instructed not to eat the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In much of the Western world, people think of the fruit as an apple, but the earliest texts just say fruit. Over the centuries, translators and artists filled in the blank by offering everything from figs to grapes to even a mushroom. If all the details aren't in a story, readers and listeners will fill in the gaps based on their own ideas and perspectives. John Dietrich founded Congregational Humanism here at FUS more than 100 years ago. And speaking before this congregation in 1924, he gave an address called, "What and Why is Christmas?" He offered his candid assessment of Christmas, including his doubts and skepticism about the story. And he did this at a time when Minnesota and the United States were more overwhelmingly Christian than they are now. In the address, Dietrich notes the plethora of holidays that existed on December 25th, long before the narratives about Jesus were written. For Greeks, the date was the birthday of Hercules. For Romans, it was the date to celebrate the solstice. And Dietrich is among the scholars who think that the church put Christmas on December 25th to capitalize and steal the pageant's thunder. Jesus' birthday is not mentioned in the Bible and was not celebrated during the first few centuries of the Christian church. Why did the church select this day, already universally celebrated, as the birthday of Jesus? Dietrich asks. The answer, he says, is because it was already universally celebrated. The church found this day a universal festival, fast fixed in the hearts of the people. They could not uproot it, so they took the more practical course of adopting and rechristening it. Or, as my partner pointed out, they didn't rechristen it, they christened it. Dietrich describes Christmas and Christianity as having been born into a world where carols and garlands and gift-giving and decorating trees already had long existed and were old news. Also, virgin births and saviors were not uncommon in the religions and mythologies of the time. So the story of Christmas and the holiday's trappings were not fully original to begin with. They were recorded differently by different biblical authors, and then had more traditions and trappings added on. And that was well before modern industrialized commerce took over Christmas. As Dietrich said, this festival is universal and human rather than sectarian and theological. Although Dietrich had his analysis of Christmas, he still found plenty of value in Jesus as a teacher and in the Christmas story and holiday. And it's striking how many of his words from that 1924 address seem to describe the challenges of our present day. We talk about the reign of justice, and injustice seems to triumph. We talk about the growth of intelligence, and yet see the masses of people running wild after every folly. We talk about good conquering evil, and yet all about us there is so much of evil and its consequences. Is it not a wonder that people have faith and hope at all? And yet that eternal hope continues to live, and in spite of everything, humanity will believe. And Christmas, Dietrich says, is simply the burst of this belief into song, the triumph of right, the triumph of love, the fresh incoming of the divine air into the world. It is the festival in its spiritual sense of that faith which in the present ill describes the far-off features of the coming good. Through the snowstorms it sees June. Above the howling blasts of December, it hears bird songs. Beneath the snow, it recognizes the thrill of seeds that promise harvest. Across the storm cloud of war, it beholds the bow of peace. The America Dietrich inhabited was still recovering from the great evils of World War I, which at the time was naively referred to as the war to end all wars. And we in our own time live in a country that is struggling to recover from a series of deadly evils and challenges that may be close to easing, but are far from disappearing. The need for holidays, for stories, for hope is something ever present in human history. Also present in human history is the malleability of even the most tradition-bound of holidays. And this is welcome news in this year like no other. Many of us are suspending our usual holiday scripts because of the realities of the pandemic, finding ways to make do or new ways to engage old traditions. This past weekend, for example, our congregation's winter solstice festivities moved online. Solstice is normally a 4-hour celebration held 2 nights in a row with dinner, singing, dancing, and hundreds of people. This year's celebration was instead a 1-hour video program, followed by an online social time. It was a safe and beautiful tribute to our long-standing tradition. And while we certainly missed being together, more people were able to watch online than are usually able to attend in person. There are sometimes gifts hidden in these hard times. But appreciating whatever upsides and lessons we may experience during the pandemic does not change the reality that this is a very difficult holiday season for many people in our congregation and across the country. Loved ones who have died of COVID or other causes leave empty spaces in our homes and in our hearts. Family and friends who have gotten together every Christmas for generations are spending the holidays apart, causing heartache and loneliness for parents, kids, grandparents, and friends. And these difficult choices are leading to tensions, disagreements, and disappointments. And the economic fallout, aggravated by elected officials playing politics with people's livelihoods and lives, means that millions of people are focused not on holidays, but on avoiding eviction or finding shelter, looking for work or looking for food. And all of these challenges are aggravated by the risk of the virus. Times like these can make it easier to understand why a story about the arrival of a powerful Savior is so widely embraced. Just as it is very human to share in the joy of a new baby, or to relate to the feeling that there is no room at the inn for us, it's very human to hope for a Savior in difficult times, times of cold and darkness. For human beings who have felt powerless, who have been let down by their fellow human beings and by the communities or countries where they live, the story of Jesus as a companion through life and as a powerful and perhaps preferential Savior can have lasting appeal. But stories about saviors can also present grave challenges. Such stories can lead to great divisions. People have been killed arguing with each other and killing each other. People have been arguing with each other and killing each other for thousands of years over whom God truly favors and whom Jesus will save. This is why our Universalist ancestors were such radicals. They believed every last person was saved. And as I have said in Christmases past, I'm wary of stories that rely on a single savior. History, of course, has many prominent heroes whose efforts have helped millions of people, from Rosa Parks to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to Dr. Anthony Fauci, who, by the way, turns 80 years old today. But a common characteristic of people who help others is that they will almost always tell you that they are not saviors and that they didn't do it alone. And so for humanists and others who believe in the importance of human effort, who believe that people have a responsibility to save each other from the problems of this world, Christmas is a good time to remember that the work is ours to do. The teachings of everyone, from John Dietrich to Jesus himself, call on us to serve our ideals by serving others, so that more of us may thrive in all the seasons of life. As we've done the past few years during the assembly just before Christmas, I want to conclude with some words from Howard Thurman. Thurman was an African-American theologian, Baptist minister, and civil rights advocate who was a mentor to Dr. King. Thurman's brief poem is called The Work of Christmas. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among brothers, and to make music in the heart. May the music in our hearts bring us warmth this holiday season, and I wish a Merry Christmas to all.
Thanks so much, Jim. And we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. All of these we hold in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again.
Sleigh bells ring, are you listening? In the lane, snow is glistening. A beautiful sight, we're happy tonight, walking in a winter wonderland. Gone away is the bluebird, here to stay is a new bird. He sings a love song as we go along, walking in a winter wonderland. In the meadow we can build a snowman and pretend that he's a circus clown. But we'll have lots of fun with Mr. Snowman until the other kitties knock him down. When it snows, ain't it thrilling? Though your nose gets a chillin'. A beautiful sight, we're happy tonight.